Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar this morning. We're going to be talking about architectural lighting and how and why and where we should be applying light when we're lighting a bridge, and what should we be thinking of, what's important. So the webinar will be about 35 minutes maybe. We'll make sure there's an opportunity for questions as well. It's not that I don't want to hear all of your beautiful voices there this morning, but we have, for the time being, put everyone on mute. It's really just so that I'll get through the content and the presentation. We'll make sure there's some time for a Q&A at the end. So hopefully you'll see on the right-hand side there's a section there for questions. Please, if it's a question during the presentation, please type away. And I will do my utmost to make sure that I respond towards the end, if that's okay. So let's crack on. For those of you that maybe this is your first time listening to a webinar from AC/DC, welcome. AC/DC are a lighting manufacturer. We're based in the north of England, and we also have, we are part of the Zumtobel Group. We have been now for about the last 3 years. And so we have offices in the States, in the UK, and around the world to support projects, to support the specifiers, whether it's on brands, whether it's an application segment, whatever people are looking for. So if this is your first time with us, great, welcome. If it's if you aren't, you may want to be made aware. We've had a couple of webinars previously, other ones that you can access and download. We did one on Cove and the importance of a Cove and what is a Cove. We've also done one on facade outdoor architectural lighting. So each one of those is about 20 minutes, half an hour long, and you are more than welcome to look at those as well. Any problems, give us a shout. We're here to help. So let's start with this. My name is Daniel Hodgson. I'm the Lighting Applications Director for AC/DC. My background is as a lighting designer, and I've been fortunate enough to be working with AC/DC now for 8 years, designing the products, looking at application, and providing these webinars. So let's start. Let's start with light, first of all. When we're trying to put all of this in context, as I'm sure you're aware, we can use light to turn spaces into experiences. We use light in terms of the captivating power of it so that we can change the way people see, how they react to buildings, to bridges, and the environment and the space that is around them. We're able to make with light the normal interesting, to make icons iconic, to make the exciting, amazing, and the impressive, well, unbelievable. And it's about that high quality engineering, attention to detail, and technical expertise, which is bringing these spaces and using a creative approach to light. So in this webinar, I'm going to go through the 7 factors of what's important. What should we be really considering when we're designing, specifically for bridges? And I'll talk about those 6 types of bridge and also those 5 methods of light. So, 3 parts to the presentation. I'll go through these in a level of detail. We could talk for hours, but I think it's important that we try and focus. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Give me a call, send me some emails, and if I can help with your projects, then of course I will. So first of all, let's focus on why. Why do we light a bridge? What does it do? What does it provide? If we're lighting bridges, we're making them look stunning. We're creating views that amaze. We're putting the lights exactly where they should be to give people a complete experience with light in the hours of darkness. It's not always, but it can be about providing that wow factor, creating memories time and time again. We're doing it to amaze. And that doesn't mean that it's a theatrical, that it's a dynamic level of light, but it's enabling people to see something that they haven't seen before. We're creating a centerpiece in the hours of darkness. We're bringing people out of their homes by creating a new destination, a node, a meeting point. We amaze with light in that way. And by bringing people out, we're also celebrating the community. We're bringing people and communities, and quite often continents, together. These structures signify a journey. It's the light that enhances that evening view, bringing that journey to life, allowing people not only to see the centerpiece that is the bridge, but the surrounding landscape and that master plan that works with it. This whole new experience enables people to explore, experience, and play more than ever before. And it also provides a structure that they can identify with and that they can have an incredible experience with. You know, the architectural lighting design should define its location and its surrounding community. You could be a resident, a tourist, taking a stroll, or maybe just taking a drive. You know, you might be viewing a bridge from 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers away, depending upon its scale. But however we're viewing it, it's the experience of that lit effect that may represent the people and the communities that are around it. And very often it's that dynamic lit effect that's allowing people to have that affinity with the scheme, either because of the association with the colors used, it's an event, it's a celebration. But it's also about how we integrate light. You know, this isn't necessarily a why as to, but you know, we should be looking to really integrate and that seamless lit effect into a building. You know, so that during the day, that structure, that bridge, the materials, the warmth, the scene appreciated, and by night, how we've integrated, and that seamless approach for a multidisciplinary design approach really brings that bridge to life in the hours of darkness. So there are 6 different types of bridge, and I'll refer to these throughout the webinar. So first of all, you have your beam. Second, you have your suspension bridge. Third, you have an arch. Fourth, cable stay. Fifth, truss. Sixth, cantilever. You know, they're all very different. How we apply light can actually be dependent upon, is it an historical bridge? We may not even be able to touch it. We may not be able to even fix onto a bridge. You know, that truss below, you know, we're looking at that and the arch as well, you know, looking at that in terms of where those luminaires are installed. It may be we can't even install on it. So we're coming from the shoreline, we're coming from the side of that landscape. On a suspension bridge and cable stay, and a little, you know, in terms of the cantilever as well, we need to be really aware of vibration. Of all of them, we need to be really careful of their location as well. So as we start to think about that, let's think about what does matter when we're lighting these 6 different types of bridge. We have context, we have color, we have contrast, people, control, custom, and installation. Now, when we talk about that multidisciplinary approach to a design, to a project, to a lighting scheme, you know, these factors mean different levels, different meanings to people within a design team. But they all have a key factor to play in how and why and where, in terms of the lit effect, in terms of products used, in terms of the commissioning. So we need to consider them. So let's just go into each of these in a little bit of detail. So context. Well, a bridge typically sits over water, over a landscape. You know, it's a link from one point to another. The context of that bridge should determine the lit effect, the luminance upon it, by considering what is in the foreground, what's in the background, making sure there's a balance of those layers of light. You know, we should be asking ourselves, how can we create contrast to ensure that the bridge is the centerpiece, if that's required? How can we create the wow factor? And how can we give users an amazing journey that is safe and actually doesn't blind them as well in terms of glare? So that's about the position of the light. But as we think about context and we think about this image that's in front of us, you know, on the left-hand side, you have a large urban town. And on the right, you have some woodlands. I appreciate you can't see all of it on this image. But, you know, we need to consider those views. We need to consider where this bridge is. We need to consider the experience that people are having as they walk along the bankside or they view from the urban centre. So let's think about those views. Let's think about that scale. Who's using this bridge? Are they using it in terms of traveling over it? That's their daily purpose, job done. it's a case of going from A to B. In the hours of darkness, let's think about that view from the water, from the shoreline, and maybe also the view underneath as well. So as we go on this journey of this webinar and we start to build these little nuggets together, that's one key element, the views, and how we're working with it. But we need to think about the product position, and we need to think about the products. We need to think about the types of products and their suitability for that environment. When we think about context, it's important that we look at a global application. We may be speccing from one country and installing in a completely different one. So let's think about where that bridge is. How are we going to light it? What do we need to think of? First of all, is it a coastal environment? Is it freshwater? If it's coastal, let's think about sea. Let's think about salt. Let's think about it's an abrasive, it's a harsh environment. So the type of luminaire we're using, is it suitable for cold and hot environments? Wherever this bridge is in the world, let's make sure the products that we're using are suitable for that application, suitable for that global destination. Now, that may seem really simple. It may seem, well, of course you would, but actually let's just make sure we are, because, in some of these locations, we need to think about, yes, coastal in terms of salt. We need to think about sandstorms. We need to think about really low temperatures and high temperatures. But we also need to think about vibration. And that's a key one on a bridge, because, whether it's, just take a suspension bridge that is designed to move with weather, with movement of how it is being used. We need to make sure that those luminaires that are being installed, the cabling, its management, its access is suitable for a level of vibration. And I'm showing here in terms of hurricane, yes, it is about wind resistance as well that creates vibration, but it is about how the luminaire is integrated into that bridge in terms of its wind resistance as well. So that being coordinated and collaborating as part of a design team is so important. So my reference and my point here really is that work with the manufacturer. Let's talk about these projects. Let's really understand them together so that we're making sure that there's a collaboration and communication as to where and how and what the fittings are and how they're being used. Let's make sure that where they're going, there is no risk of them being submerged. So that's really important. Let's make sure that where we're mounting, how we're mounting is important in terms of its context. Contrast. So I talked earlier in terms of the methods of light. And we as ACDC have those 5 methods of application that determine the level of contrast that we're creating. These methods can be quite often predetermined at concept stage, but we need to be really careful that we're not just saying you must do this or do that. I'm a big fan of talking about layers of light as to how we combine those layers of light together. It may be, is the bridge of a historical nature? And it may mean all the lighting must come from the banks, and thereby the angle of the projection must be considered in terms of the shadows that we're creating. In comparison, an open truss style structure can be lit from within, and so the view along a riverbank has that inner glow, and the outer structure is more of a silhouette. So we start to think about those 5 methods of graze, of flood, of spot, of guidance, and integrating light. So graze, we're kind of going right up against the structure and we're grazing upwards, creating a great deal of contrast, emphasizing the material, the texture. Flooding, are we going down? Are we going up? What's the purpose of that? Spot, we're picking out structure. Guidance, yes, we need to provide light, but how are we providing light? How can we do that in a creative, interactive way that works with people? And then integrating. Let's think about those points of light, lines of light that create a little bit more of a wow factor maybe from far away. So let's use those methods now as we go into this in a bit more detail. It's important though that we do consider other layers of light, okay? This is really important. We can do renderings, we can do sketches, we can do visuals of a bridge where there's no road lighting, there's no lighting to an urban space around it, below, above, whatever. And it looks amazing. But context and contrast, that's what this is about. This is about making sure that we're really aware of what's going on around us. You know, are we providing lighting to the roads by a low-level flood that's got an incredible optic that's spraying the light out? Are we looking at it being pole mounted? And therefore, what is that structure? What is that layout? What is that regular array to create the right lit effect and the right uniformity? And then let's make sure, you know, I'm talking about this as being emergency lighting. We need to make sure that these bridges are tall, they're massive structures within their environment. Let's make sure we're lighting them in a way and we're positioning the beacons of light at the very top. And that's part of that scheme that we're considering it, that it's not just excluded. So as I've said before, this is about coordination. But it's also about, you know, if we're using a pole-mounted luminaire, can we use that as well for the mounting of architectural lighting? Can we bring this together, you know, to help in terms of access and maintenance? You know, can we reduce that visual noise of having too many poles? How is the architectural lighting being installed? So let's coordinate where we can. You know, that's really important in any design, but also particularly within a bridge, let's just reduce and not increase those elements. So as we move on now to color, we need to think about materials, about the finish, about texture. We also need to think about whether we even want colored light. You know, we're using colored light generally to create a scene, a moment. You know, it can be used to represent an event or a movement of people. It's often used as part of obviously using a dynamic lit effect. So creating that scene to enable the color to change over an evening, a week, or more rapidly in seconds. So color can be used on some surfaces, but not all. You know, maybe it's about that sophisticated contrast of using white light on the outside of the surfaces and color on the inside, maybe on a spinal tower of a suspension bridge. So we're defining that through contrast, we're defining it through color, we're defining it in terms of its context. You know, color may be used as the exception, with white light used for general use and color only used to signify those special occasions. So here you can see on the left-hand side that warm white LED grazing up, integrated. On the right, we're using color and it follows people, it follows movement. So if we're using color, or maybe not using color, but use it for the right reasons, not just because we can. And if we are using color, or even if it is warm white, cool white, and we're thinking of control, what's important in control? You know, integrating a fully dynamic control system enables that the ultimate level of flexibility of that scheme, of the scenes of light evolving from 1 minute, 1 second, 1 hour, or just over a day. So we're changing that view, we're changing the experience for the viewer each time they come. They're being amazed. But control is also about luminaires and how we control light. You know, we should be really being very careful of how we're controlling light on a bridge. You know, they're very open structures or can be quite open structures. We're trying to light along suspension cables, you know, with a really narrow beam, you know, but we're capturing more than just the suspension cable. So we must make sure that we're controlling the light however we can. So you can see on the left-hand side here, the image of the Fusion 48, and those accessories that just enable us to control the view into the light source, but also control the light to ensure that it is focused more and more on what we're trying to light. Again, that's about, you know, minimizing light pollution. It's about collaboration and communication. It's about providing a dynamic lit effect where it's required, and it's about accessories to make sure that we are controlling the light. Yes, we can go a little bit crazy if we want. You know, grazing across, color wash, back and forth and back and forth. I'll be honest and say this was actually part of the mock-up to check that the commissioning was working. But sometimes people want that. Sometimes people want that, maybe only on special occasions though. So for people, you know, you can say that people are the centerpiece of everything that we're doing in light and in lighting and in schemes. They need to be at the center of how we're designing and maybe why we're designing. You know, whether we're using a bridge in a car and a vehicle to go from A to B, whether it's viewed by friends meeting on the riverbank, or it can be seen by vessels moving underneath the structure. The design should consider the primary viewpoints, aiming to provide an architectural lighting proposal of which people are at the heart of, to enable them to have new, positive, shared experiences. So here you can see, you've got people using this bridge. They're walking across it. They're viewing it from the riverbank. So it's about the position of the luminaire, and it's about the control of the light, using accessories, using a cowl, so that we're grazing light up on the outside of the building, so that that experience of walking across is an incredible experience. So it's really important that we consider how people will interact with that bridge, their viewpoints, the position of the light source, the walkway from the riverbank, the control. These elements now start to really come together. And as we come on to installation, so the position and the visual impact of the luminaires should be really carefully considered and coordinated. And that's part of a multidisciplinary design approach, which I've mentioned, to ensure that all luminaires are accessible and can be maintained. It's not necessarily just about the luminaires that we need to consider as part of a lighting design. You've got access gantries, you've got ladders, you've got panels, you've got cabling. So let's make sure that we are considering those as part of the overall physical intervention upon a bridge. This is all going to need a great deal of coordination. We see those elements during the day. Let's make sure that they are coordinated again. Let's make sure that it's safe, obviously, to install the luminaires. So here you can see on the right-hand side of this page that sort of generic design process that people are involved. It's the structural engineer working with the lighting designer, working with the consultant. It's that close collaboration with the contractor and those that are installing. Maybe it's with the municipality, the council, but we're doing it for people. And I know, we all talk about our annoyances with each other in this design process. And many people, we all talk about how if we collaborated better, this would be so much better. And it is so important, especially on a bridge. Yes, it is on other projects, but let's make sure that we're creating an incredible lit effect, a safe environment in terms of installation and commissioning as well. The last of what matters is a custom approach, because every bridge is different. There's so many bridges I'm showing here in this webinar, and it's about the fact that every bridge is different. They need very often a very different solution as well. There will be times when projects need something just a little bit different. It's about maybe a different color temperature, maybe a different optic size, a different finish. And it's all about achieving. It may even require a completely new product, but it's about achieving what that original dream was. When we're thinking about how we're lighting, why we're lighting, what is it bringing to this space, to this community? So they are different. And we recognize that specials are required and that custom solution is required. And it's about collaboration and coordination to make sure that we get this lit effect, that we're working together, that whether it's about technology, whether it's about color, whether it's about luminaire design, whether it's about bracketry and installation, all of this really comes together. So we've talked now about those 7 factors in how. I've talked a little bit about the 6 types of bridge, and I'm going to come on to that in the case studies. And I'll use those case studies in terms of these 5 methods of light. So I introduced earlier graze, flood, spot, guidance, and integrate. Let's just go on to these in a little bit of detail. First of all, graze. To accentuate the full length, the depth, and the linearity of a bridge, consider how we can graze up this architectural facade, this bridge. We're providing that smooth and continuous graze effect from beginning to end. Grazing is an application method where the luminaire, if you don't know, is mounted really close to the edge. It can be offset a little bit, but it's really about highlighting the texture, the color of that material. Grazing is often used as a layer of light within a scheme. We always talk about the integration of the luminaire into the architecture. And a successful graze application is often where we're using the moldings, the lines of the architecture of the bridge, so hiding the luminaires, so that during the day they're not seen, but by night they really bring, and the scene of light brings that bridge to life. So it's about careful positioning. It's about the control of the light, in terms of, do we need to tilt it? Do we need to put an accessory onto it, to reduce that view into the light source? So here you can see the recessed linear blade, just great on the right-hand side. So that's the sort of thing where we're grazing light up that facade. So let's talk about flood. I'm a big fan of making sure that there is a consistency in the visual appearance of any luminaire that is being used on a project. And on a flood, it's those families of luminaires that enable a design to fulfill the demands of a bridge. Those product families provide a complete and a coordinated design that meets the functional expectations and also the requirements for those special occasions. When luminaires are able to be installed within the structure of a bridge, this can bring that inner glow to create high contrast between the outer sections that aren't directly lit and creating silhouettes against the night sky. On this bridge in Croatia, you can see how that flood is being used to light the underside of the bridge from the bank side, but also it's lighting the towers on either side. So it's creating that entrance, it's creating that coloured lit effect as you're coming on to the bridge on either side. So it's about providing a multitude of different schemes with infinite colours to suit the expectations and the requirements of this bridge. And this bridge, has its own website. It has its own Facebook page. People stand and they wait for their favourite colour to come on so that they can be photographed with it. They use the colours for special occasions as well. So maybe national days and charitable days. So then the colour can be tuned to suit a specific requirement. So they're using colour to match the need, to match the activity. And then spot. Spot is all about picking out the architectural detail, using a narrow or very narrow beam, grazing up a pillar or structure to create contrast. We're often using that alongside grazing methods in a layered scheme. The spotlight can be integrated or offset from the structure to really provide that punch. But on this project here, you can see how a number of miniature individual LED sources are carefully integrated into the structure, providing that warmth as you cross the bridge. So earlier I've talked about the considerations, those factors. So here the context, it's a garden, it's a small scale, but it's a beautiful project. Color, it's warm white. Contrast, yes, you get that contrast between, because of the context. The control, it's very simple, in terms of it being on and off on this occasion. So when we think about those factors and we really start to bring this in, hopefully that starts to create the picture that you were looking for. And then guidance. So the power of light, it enables us to make the interesting amazing. And guidance is a great example of this. It is often expected that the lighting to a bridge must meet a certain level and a certain level of uniformity. It is how we interpret those rules sometimes that then determines the identity in the experience of how we're using that bridge. By lighting being a major part of the design process, light can be seamlessly integrated into the structure of the bridge. By providing this focus, we place light where we need it, when we need it, maximizing the view, putting people at the center of the design, minimizing any light pollution, and then creating a memorable experience. This bridge enables the light to follow people. It's blue light, but it's white light as people cross over it. So again, it's colored light combined with white light, combined with people. Its context is a busy urban or regeneration space. So it responds to the need, it responds to people. And that change in that lit effect, that subtle changes therefore the lit effect and the view of the bridge by those on the shoreline as well. This one is a pedestrian bridge, but the designers wanted to create an effect that wasn't static and would effectively bring the bridge to life. It's very creative, and it has that kind of dynamic lit effect. So the last of the 5 methods is integrate. So far, the techniques used and discussed in this webinar are generally about how light is applied or projected upon a surface or series of surfaces. This final option is how we use light to integrate into the bridge. Integrating light is all about those points of light, lines of light, integrating it, but it is about working really closely as a team to make sure this works. This type of application is often associated with a dynamic lit effect of changing color, of shimmering light. It's about bringing attention to the structure, framing its height, its scale, its form, using these points of light. And here you can see this is a structure of parts of a bridge which was called the Mersey Wave. It's about this providing a visually stunning structure that's intended to express a tidal wave. So, as we come to a conclusion on this webinar, the 5 methods, we can look at grazing in floods of spot to guide or to integrate. And don't just think of that as do one or the other or one or the other. We can combine this in terms of layers of light. There are 6 different types of bridge, of which I realized arch and truss are the wrong way around. I apologize. So yes, you've got those 6 different types. And what matters? What are those top 7 that we should be considering? It's about context, about color, about contrast. It's about people and about control. It is about custom and realizing that every bridge is different and it might just need something a little bit different in the design. And it's about installation and making sure that we're coordinated, that we're collaborating, and we're making sure that we can maintain, that we can access all the way through. So if this has been of interest to you, brilliant, thank you, and thank you for your time. So this webinar will be available to download. We also have a segment guide that provides a bit more introduction in terms of this webinar. We have a light guide that is a how-to interactive guide, and also we also have product information as well, of course, that are all suitable for the 6 types of bridges that we've introduced today. So I will try and